EVTN News, your source for Catholic news, your best source for Catholic news. And I want to start off with the Synodal Report, the USCCB Synod Report. Most of you aren't watching this program for this information, but I think it's interesting to see exactly what they said and some of the reactions. So you can read it for yourself, the whole thing. But I do want to cover a few of these things. So the 16-page Bishop's Report, and no, I won't be reading the whole thing, emphasized a number of issues raised by U.S. Catholics during parish and diocesan consultation discernment sessions, which began after Pope Francis called for a global synod in 2021. The document said it was developed from regional synthesis texts produced to summarize diocese and parish reports in each of the 16 USCCB administrative regions. So each diocese is part of a region. This information is coming from the Pillar. While the USCCB's report praised the synod process, the national document noted wounds experienced by the U.S. Catholics, explaining that the still unfolding events of the sexual abuse crisis were chief among them, alongside the impact of the virus and an experience among Catholics of theological and political division within the Church. Apparently drawing from regional synod reports, the text identified two broad groups of those who experienced marginalization and thus a lack of representation in the Church. The first group, so the marginalized, the first includes those marginalized who are made vulnerable by their lack of social and or economic power, such as, of course, immigrant communities, ethnic minorities, those who are undocumented, the unborn and their mothers, people who are experiencing poverty, homelessness, or incarceration, those people who have disabilities or mental health issues, and people suffering from various addictions. So these people who pretend to be marginalized, are they making these decisions themselves? Anyway, included also in this group are women whose voices are frequently marginalized in the decision-making processes of the Church, the text explained. So they have no interest in being Catholic. All right, the second group, you'll like this. The second group of marginalized Catholics includes those who are marginalized because circumstances in their own lives are experienced as impediments to full participation in the life of the Church. Experienced because circumstances in their own, again, lifestyle choices. Among these are members of the LMNOP community, persons who have been divorced or those who have remarried without a declaration of nullity, as well as individuals who have civilly married but who never married in the Church. Again, they made those decisions. You make your decisions. You don't choose what happens to you in life, but you can make decisions, and there's consequences as a result of your decisions, right? If I go to a car dealership and I buy Mercedes, a brand new Mercedes, well, guess what? I'm going to end up with a nice car loan, right? I made it so I can complain about being in debt, or I can just buy a cheaper car. I mean, you make decisions in your life, and the decisions that you make, there's consequences to your decisions, right? A national synthesis text explained that an estimated 700,000 people participated in the diocesan phase of the Synod in the United States, either through in-person meetings or by online surveys. So if you answered a survey for your diocese, then you're counted in those 700,000 people. Well, but let's do a little bit of statistical analysis here. The Pillar says more than 73 million Americans identified as Catholic in 2021, according to the Center for Applied Research in the apostolate. I thought it said apostate for a second at Georgetown University. You can see how I'd get that two words confused there. So, in the statistics, 700,000 people out of 73 million, that equates to less than 1% of American Catholics who participated in this synod. And that includes That includes surveys. Okay. Is anyone else having issues with the video? Let me know in the comments. Eric Sammons had some comments on this. He said at Crisis Magazine that there were also the typical complaints revolving around power politics. In a section titled Co-Responsibility, the report, the USCCB Senate report states, many want to see church leadership take more seriously the talents and knowledge of the laity. Some expressed the need to use more effective parish councils and diocesan pastoral councils. Eric says, yes, just what the church needs, better committees, right? Not surprisingly, the report hit on all the properly woke talking points, such as encouraging diversity, lamenting marginalization, overcoming racism, fighting climate change, welcoming LMNOP plus persons, and empowering women. There's little difference between what this USCCB document states on these topics and what you'd find produced by your average public university's diversity program. To be fair, the report also noted that limited access to the 1962 missal was lamented and trust in the hierarchy of the church is weak and needs strengthened. Well, he said that's an understatement. I agree. All right. And I do want to talk a little bit about the Latin Mass that was mentioned in the Synod report. And thank you, everyone. The Church Soviet means council. Okay. Another enduring wound, widely reflected in synodal consultations, was the experience that the Church is deeply divided. Okay, this is directly from the Synod documents. Participants felt this division as a profound sense of pain and anxiety. As one participant shared, the divisive political ideologies present in our society have seeped into all aspects of our lives. Division regarding the celebration of a liturgy was reflected in synodal consultations. Sadly, celebration of the Eucharist is also experienced as an area of division within the Church. The most common issue regarding the liturgy as a celebration of the pre-conciliar Mass, so the Latin Mass. The limited access to the 1962 Missal was lamented. Many felt that the differences over how to celebrate the liturgy sometimes reach a level of animosity. People on each side of the issue reported feeling judged by those who differ from them. Well, the people on each side of the issue, I think the people that complain the loudest are the people who are against the Latin Mass, and they say, oh, the people who attend the Latin Mass are so judgmental. Well, not really. We just want the Latin Mass. I mean, what about the people who don't attend the Latin Mass? Are they judgmental? Are they judging the people who attend the Latin Mass? You have to think about it that way. Put the shoe on the other foot, right? Although it won't fit. Anyway, we'll move on. The Vatican is looking for an original musical score for the official hymn for the Holy Year 2025 that will highlight its theme, Pilgrims of Hope. You've probably seen the strange, what do you call it, graphics that they've chosen for that. Very strange. Doesn't look very inspiring at all. Looks actually kind of dumb. This song must be an original and unpublished score for liturgical purposes and for voice and organ to accompany lyrics already written in Italian, it said. So I say that they're going to watch. So since, My Little Pony, I think My Little Pony has had a new theme song in like the newer shows. I tried to just Google the theme song, and you can find a few online. And the old theme song sounds a lot like, is it Dan Schutt's Glory to God? I think it is. I think Dan Schutt wrote that one. Seems like almost kind of a ripoff from the My Little Pony theme song. But I think My Little Pony has a new theme song. So will this be the theme song for the Vatican in 2025? I thought that was pretty interesting. Of course, we're going to get another song, Go Make a Difference, right? The USCCB needs to do that more often, right? They need to write their own music more. Yeah, right. Um, all right, now the big news is the Belgian bishops. They published a blessing ceremony for LMNOPs. Yes, that's right. People said, oh, they defied the Vatican. Well, they kind of did. I mean, the Vatican did issue that statement declaring that LMNOPs cannot receive blessings. So, what are they going to do about it? We'll talk about that after I read a little bit of this. What's going on here? This is actually really big news. Following the German schism, basing their argument on Amoris Laetitia, there you go, Cardinal Joseph de Kessel of Mechelen, Brussels, and other bishops of the Flemish-speaking part of Belgium on September 20th published a document titled Being Pastorally Close to LMNOP Persons for a Welcoming Church That Excludes No One. The bishop's publication contains a suggested liturgy for LMNOP blessings, including prayers, scripture readings, and parts in which the couple can, quote, express before God how they are committed to one another. So basically, it's like a marriage ceremony. The bishops of the Flemish-speaking part of Belgium also announced that each diocese will appoint a person as concrete response and fulfillment to the desire to give explicit attention to the situation of LMNOP persons, their parents, and families in the conduct of policy. Pope Francis also expressed this explicitly in his April 2016 apostolic exhortation on the pastoral care of families, Amoris Laetitia. I would say explicit is probably a good term. Yeah. Now, I did say that the German bishops are meeting with Pope Francis in November, and I think also, I don't know if the Belgians are part of that as well, but it'll be something to follow. But what I really think will happen is that they're going to go to the Vatican and they're going to meet with Pope Francis, and then they're going to say, oh, Pope Francis supports us. So Pope Francis supports this initiative, just like Father James Martin says. And I believe him, actually. And that'll be it. And then the Vatican won't say anything. And then we'll move on. Just like we do with everything else, right? Because, the Pope has authority to excommunicate people. The Pope has authority to condemn ideas. But what's condemned? Rigidity in the Latin Mass. Although it's not condemned in heaven, it's not condemned by God. Vigano had a response to the Belgian bishops. He said, the ideological basis of this sacrilegious rite is indicated in the subtly deceptive words of Amoris Laetitia, which states that every person, regardless of sexual orientation, ought to be respected in his or her dignity and treated with consideration. He has a short reflection on that, which you can read in the description, at the link in the description below. Vigano doesn't mince words, and he says basically what needs to be said about these bishops. Will we call them apostates? I don't know, but they are forming a new religion. All right. Well, I'm going to take you to France here. 30 faithful gathered in Metz Cathedral in France on September 17th with flags of St. Joan of Arc and St. Michael to pray the Rosary and perform an act of reparation. The reason the cathedral was used as a venue for a handball event on September 5th. Canon Dominic Thierry, a priest at the cathedral, called the police to deport those praying. So there you go. The cathedral was used for a handball event. I mean, you know what Jesus did whenever people turned the temple into a marketplace, right? Yeah. Just fill in the gaps. Fill in the gaps with what I'm with what I'm thinking. Moving on, Father James Martin will be speaking at the Bruce Grey Catholic District School Board in Ontario, Canada via Zoom. Kennedy Hall wrote this article. Last year, he spoke to the Waterloo District School Board in a similar fashion. Kennedy Hall said, I remember watching Bruce Gray's current director walk out of a professional development conference smiling and chumming it up with the other administrators after we were all forced to sit through a presentation that may as well have been a seminar on how to be an LMNOP Buddhist. I wish I was kidding. A woman in LMNOP marriage was flown in and paid a massive sum to teach a group of Catholic educators that, among other things, human beings are essentially just collections of energy, and we can manifest good vibes to emote stronger to our students. There you go. All right, if you've been following the news, the Summorum Pontificum pilgrimage in D.C. took place on Saturday, September 17th. There were between 250 and 300 Catholics from across the country prayerfully marching 5 miles from the Cathedral of St. Thomas More in Arlington, Virginia, to the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle in Washington, D.C., as the first ever national Summorum Pontificum pilgrimage for the restoration of the traditional Latin Mass. Now, it sounds okay. I mean, it's nice to have a Latin Mass march. I wouldn't necessarily call it a Summorum Pontificum pilgrimage. I think Summorum Pontificum is, I don't know, it's kind of done at this point. It really kind of is. And even the good bishops, as we will see here in this next story, are suffering. Bishop Dominique Ray of Fréjus-Toulon in southeastern France recently held a meeting with his clergy to discuss changes that are being made following a Vatican inquiry resulting in the postponement of the diocese's priestly ordinations earlier this year. Remember this. This was Dom Alcuin Reed's bishop who suspended him for being ordained in the old rite. Well, guess what, Bishop? Because of your obedience to the Novus Ordo Church and the Pope Francis, your ordinations are suspended. So Dom Alcuin Reed got ordained, and the bishop could not ordain his own priests. So there you go. That's what happens. That's thanks to your obedience. On September 15th, Ray held a listening session at the La Castille Seminary with around 150 priests from the diocese to discuss the events that have unfolded over the past few months. In their statement, the diocese said, since the suspension of ordinations in June, no new information has come from Rome, and the diocese still does not know when priests and deacons can be ordained again. Wow. Diocesan visitations are rarely announced publicly, and the visitation into Toulon was not revealed until this summer, when the diocese announced the postponement of this year's priestly ordinations, which were delayed indefinitely as a result of the visitation. Apparently, Bishop Ray is known as sort of a conservative bishop. Well, there you go. There you go. That's what you get. And if these bishops don't stand up and do something about it, then they're just going to fade away into oblivion, right? They have no priests. They do. They do have 150 priests. That's what. If you have no priests coming in, then what's going to happen? It's kind of what's probably the goal with the FSSP and the Institute. Now, they have had ordinations, but I would imagine that's going to be shut down pretty quickly. And with this diocese, the Vatican's shutting that down too. So, okay, can't ordain priests. You can't grow your diocese. Sounds great. Great way to grow the faith, right? Not that we're under any impression the Vatican is actually trying to grow the Catholic faith. They're trying to change it into something else. I think we'll see that in one of the following stories, but I'm not trying to grow it in any way. Cardinal Luis Ladaria, prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, denied a mother with a sleeping baby in her arms to receive communion in the mouth in St. Peter's Basilica on September 22nd. That's right, he denied her communion on the tongue. A witness informed Deacon Nick Donnelly that Ladaria forced a woman to push around her baby in order to free a hand. Then Ladaria placed communion between her fingers. She managed to consume it without dropping her child. What about particles of the Eucharist? Did she manage to consume it without dropping particles of the Eucharist on the floor? That's a good question. Communion in the hand is an abuse, and denying communion on the tongue is even further an abuse. Cardinal Ladaria. Pathetic. Absolutely terrible. All right. Cardinal Mario Gretsch said a different church is emerging from the synod process. Well, that's pretty apparent. It's been emerging for the last 9 years. He is a Secretary General of the Vatican Synod, and he had spoken to Francis after the Amazon Synod about married priests. Francis replied, "Do you know why I did not accept this proposal? Because I felt there was no discernment during the synodal assembly." So it looked like that was the goal during the Amazon Synod, but Pope Benedict and Cardinal Sarah wrote a book and kind of undermined Pope Francis' efforts to change the church discipline on this issue. And so Pope Francis seems like he's making an excuse here. I mean, he was definitely poised to change, but wasn't able to do it, thankfully. Okay, so at this time, however, asked if Francis's response was not a rejection, Gretsch replied, "We need time." So they're just going to kind of play the long game and try to move forward with their nonsense. So there you go. Married priest on the horizon. Okay. So have you heard about the pro-life story? This pro-life man. So there was an FBI raid on the home of a Pennsylvania pro-life family, and this father of 7 children was arrested in front of his children by like 30 FBI agents. So his name is Mark Houck. He is frequently seen sidewalk counseling in front of Pennsylvania abortion businesses, and he was charged with a minor altercation in September 2021. A pro-abortion escort repeatedly bullied and intimidated this guy's 12-year-old son who was with him after multiple verbal assaults. And the activist getting in his son's face, Houck pushed him away and he fell. The incident resulted in no charges. They resulted in charges that were never pressed, and the court ultimately dismissed the complaint filed by the activist. So now the FBI, 25 to 30 armed FBI agents raided their home recently. His wife said they entered the home and pointed rifles at them as the kids began screaming. This is ridiculous. So the FBI agents proceeded to put him into a vehicle, and when his wife asked if they had a warrant, she said they replied they were going to take him whether they had a warrant or not. What does that sound like? So now he's facing... The Biden's Department of Justice is now charging him with violating the FACE Act, not even sure what that is, and he's facing a maximum sentence of 11 years in prison, 3 years of supervised release, and fines of up to $350,000. What? Okay, it's so bizarre, but this is actually happening in real life. I mean, come on, people. Like, this is unbelievable. I think you need to find a way to defend yourself. Maybe not against, like, armed FBI agents, but I mean, maybe if that's what it comes to, we're gonna have to defend ourselves. I mean, we're gonna have to raise our own army and defeat this communist, these communist brigades, because that's what it is. This guy shoved someone, and the charges were dismissed, and now Biden's trying to make a statement out of it. This is unbelievable. I don't really have any other reaction to it, but get your own property, and there are certain I can't even really talk about it. I can't really talk about it on here right now. There are certain things you can do. So anyway, I don't think you can prevent like this crazy stuff from happening, but I don't know. All right, here's a question. What happens when Francis condemns SSPX? Same thing as what happened whenever they were condemned before under John Paul II. They just ignore it. Except this time we have ground to stand on because they were excommunicated and unexcommunicated, and then when they're excommunicated again, they'll say, all right, been there, got a bumper sticker, and, call me whenever you unexcommunicate us. That's exactly what will happen. So, all right, well, this has been EVTN News, a lot of synod stuff. Thanks for sticking with me on that. And, see if your diocese has a synod report, see what they said. And that's it. Thanks for watching. We are the laity, and we will not be silent.